I'm Shirley, a 31-year-old office worker. A year ago, I married Mason, a man I met on a blind date. After a year and a half of dating, he proposed, and settling down had always been my dream. Although the proposal felt somewhat hasty, I accepted it, believing it was the right decision at the time. In hindsight, I realized I should have approached it with more caution. Shortly after our wedding, Mason made a surprising decision to switch jobs. When I asked him about it, he explained that his previous position didn't allow him to showcase his skills fully. What shocked me even more was his announcement that he had already resigned and would be leaving by the end of the month. Thankfully, he found another job quickly, but it came with a lower salary than his last position. At first, I wasn't too worried since I had my own job, but then Mason started pressuring me to quit. I might have considered leaving if his new salary had been enough to support us both, but with the recent job change, it was clear that we relied heavily on my income to cover essential expenses like rent and car payments. Quitting my job under such uncertain financial circumstances felt too risky. Mason insisted that his salary would go up soon, but there were no concrete indications of when that might happen. One evening, Mason handed me divorce papers, seemingly to intimidate me. "You know I'm ready for this whenever," he challenged. I urged him to take a breath and rethink his words, but he simply stood up and retreated to his room. That confrontation left me reflecting on the hasty decisions and unexpected changes that had occurred since I met him. I firmly told Mason that I wouldn't quit my job until his salary improved. Initially, he seemed to accept my stance, but the topic kept resurfacing. Now, a year into our marriage, Mason's salary hadn't changed, yet he continued to pressure me to quit. "When are you going to leave?" he would ask. I often felt the urge to respond sarcastically, but I knew our financial stability hinged on my income. If it was crucial for me to resign, I believed Mason should focus on advancing his own career instead. Over time, I began to understand why Mason was so adamant about my leaving work. This became particularly evident during our visits to his parents' house. Whenever we were with his mother, Martha, Mason would express concern, claiming he wanted to ease her burden. She would express her gratitude, and then he would glance at me pointedly, as if nudging me toward resignation. He suggested that she needed help, but Martha was far from helpless. She was active, healthy, and even held a part-time job that funded her hobbies and social life. It was clear that she didn't require my assistance, yet Mason continued to push for my departure. "If only one of us could be home during the day, we could check on Mom every day," he said one day. Out of the blue, he seemed to envision me visiting Martha daily, which felt overwhelming and unnecessary. When I asked him directly what he expected me to do since Martha was perfectly capable, he listed off mundane tasks like helping with housework and running errands. It became obvious he had plans for how I could contribute, but none of those justifications warranted leaving my career. This endless cycle of requests and justifications was exhausting. I needed Mason to realize that while I was willing to support his family when necessary, giving up my job without a solid reason was not something I could take lightly. "But Martha has her part-time job and spends most of her days out with friends, right?" I pointed out when he suggested I could take care of housework during the day. His response puzzled me. It seemed he was implying I should become his mother's maid. Mason appeared deeply concerned about maintaining a specific image, especially in front of his parents. I couldn't understand why he didn't handle the household chores himself if he was so eager to take care of them. Despite his persistent pressure, I stood firm in my decision not to quit my job. I also opted not to visit my in-laws on my day off, although I did make an effort to see them during major holidays like New Year's. Reflecting on our visits, I noticed a pattern. Mason frequently delegated tasks to me, asking me to tidy up, assist his mom, or run errands. I pushed back against these requests. When he suggested I go to the store, I would reply, "Don't you know this area better than I do?" His standard excuse was that it wouldn't look right if he did it himself, a rationale I found both puzzling and manipulative. It seemed he was more focused on controlling the situation and projecting an image of family care than on genuinely caring for his parents or me. As time passed, my perception of Mason shifted. It became clear that he was more concerned with appearances than with genuine affection or respect for me. When I finally confronted him, asking why he didn't help out or consider quitting his job to care for his mother, his reaction was telling. He looked both disgusted and uncomfortable. "That's not something I'm supposed to do," he replied. "I'm giving you these instructions so my mom thinks you're a considered, useful wife. You should appreciate how kind I'm being." His words revealed everything. He wanted to shift all the demanding tasks onto me while showcasing his virtue as if it were something extraordinary. But I was neither his servant nor a subordinate, and I certainly didn't deserve to be disrespected in front of my in-laws. It became increasingly clear that Mason's priorities were misaligned, valuing appearances over genuine partnership and support. As he continued with these unreasonable demands, I knew I couldn't stay silent. I would stand my ground. Despite our numerous discussions, Mason hadn't changed. He kept pestering me with the same question. "Are you going to quit your job?" Furthermore, every time we visited my in-laws, he continued to boss me around as he always had. After reaching my breaking point, I realized it was time for a serious conversation. I needed to talk to Mason about our relationship and the expectations he had for me. I initiated a serious conversation with Mason, hoping to guide our discussion towards something constructive. "We need to talk about our future," I said, trying to set a tone of mutual understanding. However, Mason shot back, clearly annoyed. "What are you even trying to say?" Frustration boiled over as I expressed. "I'm honestly fed up. I'm tired of you constantly asking when I'll quit my job, and I'm exhausted from the pressure to take care of Martha." My grievances were laid bare, but Mason dismissed my concerns. "Why are you so upset about that? You're my wife, and it's your duty to care for my parents," he retorted. I challenged his outdated views, asking, "Don't you think it's unfair to place that responsibility solely on me? Shouldn't you, as their biological child, be the one helping with the housework and caring for them?" Mason responded defensively, insisting, "No way. It's the wife's duty to do it. Are you the kind of person who doesn't care about family?" His accusation stung. "I'm disappointed to hear you say that," he added, seizing the moment to highlight a double standard. I pressed on, asking, "Then let me ask you this. How have you been caring for my parents? If I asked you to take care of them, would you do it?" Mason stared at me blankly, struggling to understand the connection. "What are you saying? Why should a husband be responsible for his wife's parents?" he asked, missing the point entirely. I clarified my stance. "I'm saying that a husband should take care of his own parents, and you should support your wife's family too." Mason seemed confused. "So you only prioritize your own blood relatives?" I challenged, feeling increasingly frustrated. "I'm really disappointed in you. I won't be visiting your parents anymore." His reaction was explosive. "Why would you do that? Enough is enough. I'm the one who wants you to stop this nonsense," he shot back. I could sense the tension escalating. "How do you talk to me like that?" "My mom is right," Mason exclaimed, his temper flaring. In a shocking twist, he revealed he had divorce papers ready. "See? I scared you, didn't I? I'm ready for this any time. So think about what you just said," he declared smugly before retreating to his room. His behavior left me fuming. It was unbelievable how selfish he was acting. The triumphant look on his face made it clear that the divorce papers were merely a threat meant to manipulate me. The involvement of his mother, Martha, only fueled my suspicion that Mason was acting as a puppet for her, trying to control me while following her orders. It became increasingly apparent that our marriage was in serious trouble, and Mason's lack of understanding only frustrated me further. He had handed me the divorce papers with witnesses present, including Martha and his friends, meaning I could sign and file them whenever I wanted. The following day, after Mason left for work, I decided to take action. I filled out the divorce papers and submitted them to the city office. As a precaution, I also filed a notice of non-acceptance of the marriage certificate, anticipating that Mason might threaten to file it himself. I reached out to my parents to explain the situation. When they learned I had prepared the divorce papers, They were initially shocked but quickly rallied behind my decision, outraged by Mason's behavior. They offered to help me move my belongings immediately. Taking a leave from work, they came over, and together we relocated all my things to their house while Mason was out. For the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely comfortable and at ease in my parents' home. Reflecting on my marriage, it became clear that Mason had never contributed his fair share to household chores. I was the one cooking dinner after long work days and managing all the cleaning and laundry on my days off. On top of that, he expected me to care for his parents, which simply wasn't feasible. That evening, Mason called, likely just back from work. "Hey, where are you right now?" he asked, his tone a mix of surprise and selfishness. "I'm at my parents' house," I replied. "Oh, why would you go back there without my permission? And where's all your stuff?" "Don't tell me you're staying the night," he questioned. I almost laughed at how oblivious he was to the seriousness of the situation. He thought I was just staying overnight when I had actually taken most of my belongings with me. "I'm not coming back," I said firmly. "What are you talking about? Come back here and make me some food," he demanded. "Make it yourself," I replied, ending the call. I couldn't engage in a conversation about divorce while he continued to be so dismissive. To find some peace, I decided to block his number and wait for him to come to my parents' house, fully aware that our relationship had reached a breaking point. A week later, Mason arrived at my parents' home with his parents, creating an intense atmosphere as we faced off in the living room. The tension was palpable. It was 3 against 3, and Mason's incredulous tone cut through the air as he demanded to know how I could leave without his permission. I calmly responded that he had treated me like a housekeeper, and that all I ever wanted was for him to take responsibility for his own family. Mason's mother, Martha, shot me a fierce glare, while my father began to tremble with anger. I quickly intervened, reminding everyone that Mason had insisted I quit my job to care for his mother, arguing it was my duty as his wife. Yet when it came to my family, he expected me to handle everything on my own. It became clear to me that Mason wanted obedience, using me to take care of his parents while he reaped the credit for it all. He prioritized his parents over mine, and I asked Martha if she had ever heard him say any of this. Martha continued to glare, but Mason's father, Liam, looked confused, as if he hadn't been aware of the dynamics at play. Mason interrupted, waving the divorce papers and claiming that it had all been Martha's idea. Liam, taken aback, asked why Mason would say that. Martha, defending her son, claimed it was due to my attitude problem. I pressed further, asking if Mason had really said that my parents weren't a priority. Martha responded defensively, insisting that it was natural for his parents to come first. I found this absurd. I had come to support them after hearing about the unfair treatment I had faced, yet they were still trying to manipulate the situation to their advantage. Liam, however, was more supportive of me and challenged Mason's behavior, making it clear that it was unacceptable to treat me this way. He expressed genuine concern and promised to have a serious talk with Mason, asserting that I wasn't to blame for the turmoil in our marriage. Then, I turned my attention back to Mason, who now looked nervous. I informed him that I had already filed the divorce papers he had given me, meaning we were no longer married. Both Mason and Martha turned pale at my announcement. Mason, in shock, demanded to know why I would file without his permission. I reminded him that he had said I could file whenever I wanted, and he had even filled out his part, and had Martha sign as a witness. The tension in the room escalated, and Liam, visibly furious, confronted Mason. He accused him of using the threat of divorce to control me. In a moment of anger, Liam slapped Mason across the face, shocking everyone in the room. Martha looked shaken by the scene unfolding before her. Liam then turned to me, offering a sincere apology for what I had just witnessed. He expressed his understanding and reassured me that I had every right to seek a divorce given Mason's behavior. As the situation settled, Liam tightened his grip on Mason's collar, demanding apologies from both him and Martha before ushering them out of the house. After they left, I expressed my gratitude to Liam for his intervention. He reassured me that all of Mason's assets and property would be transferred to me without complications. Given my higher income and the effort I had put into managing our household, it was a relief to know I had secured everything from our marriage. Later, I learned that Liam had also decided to divorce Martha, clearly appalled by her behavior during the confrontation. A few days after that, I bumped into a colleague from Mason's former workplace who shared surprising news. Mason hadn't been performing well at his job and was frequently criticized by his boss. In a fit of defiance, he had resigned and switched jobs, which only deepened my frustration with him. Instead of owning up to his shortcomings, he chose to blame others, which likely contributed to his lower pay at his new position. Now, I felt a sense of relief having left him behind. I rented a cozy apartment and was enjoying my newfound independence. My work was going well, and I had even received a raise recently. For the time being, I wasn't interested in dating. I preferred to focus on my career. Mason had always been more concerned with appearances than with genuine skills, putting on a show at home without making any real progress in his career. It was unfortunate how some spouses resorted to using divorce threats to feel powerful. It was a major misstep. I hope that one day, they would recognize their mistakes and find happiness on their own. As for me, I felt grateful to have moved on from Mason and looked forward to the possibility of meeting someone special when I was ready.